Antiquity Unveiled, the most marvelous revelations concerning the origin of Christianity from the 19th century by Jonathan Manning Roberts. We continue Eusebius. Sorry about my wet foot squeaking the surface there. McClintock and Strong's Cyclopedia says, Apologia prot per Christianon pros Antonianon ton Eusebe, mentioned in the only two known manuscripts of the Apologies, and in the older edition of Justin, is one of the most interesting remains of Christian antiquity. It is addressed to the emperors Antoninus Pius and his adopted sons, Verissimus, the philosopher, and afterwards the emperor Marcus Aurelius and Lucius, the philosopher. We follow the common reading, not that of Eusebius, afterwards the emperor Verus, colleague of M. Aurelius. If there was any such language put in the mouth of Josephus by Justin Pius in his letter to Antoninus Pius, we cannot trace it. But one thing is very certain, that Eusebius was the first to refer to such a passage in Josephus, and he was, no doubt, the interpolator of that fraud, if not its author. He, as a spirit, seems to regard this forgery as worse than any he ever committed. So far as the moral guilt is concerned, one pious fraud of that nature is as bad as another. Well, let's not go into the Christian way of looking into things as, oh, well, to violate the law is, well, not all cases are equal. As will be seen in our extracts from Lardner's works, Eusebius did say that the ancient writings of Philos Therapeuta were our Gospels and Epistles. Not so only, but the spirit of Eusebius comes back and testifies that such was the fact. The statement of the Spirit that he was compelled by the facts to state in his history, that the gospel of Jesus Christ was neither new nor strange, is borne out by the following extract of Lardner. The contents of the 4th chapter of the Ecclesiastical History is to this purpose: the religion published by Jesus Christ to all nations is neither new nor strange. Well, religion always seems strange to someone. For though, says he, without controversy, we are but of late, and the name of Christians is indeed new, and has not long obtained over the world, yet our manner of life and the principles of our religion have not been lately devised by us, but were instituted and observed, if I may so say, from the beginning of the world, by good men accepted of God, from those natural notions which are implanted in men's minds. That's why they usurp the tonic as a book for them, too. This I shall show in the following manner. It is well known that the nation of the Hebrews is not new, but distinguished by antiquity. They have writings containing accounts of ancient men, few indeed in number, but very eminent for piety, justice, and every other virtue, of whom some lived before the flood, others since, sons and grandsons of Noah, particularly Abraham, whom the Hebrews glory in as to the father and founder of their nation. And if anyone, ascending from Abraham to the first man, should affirm that all of them who were celebrated for virtue were Christians in reality, though not in name, he would not speak much besides the truth. Now, Eusebius lived and wrote 300 years after the alleged death of Jesus Christ, and yet we have him declaring that the name of Christians was then new, and that their religion and customs were of long antecedent date. And who believes that Eusebius would have given such a death blow the pretense that Jesus Christ had taught or established a new religion, or any religion at all, that he had dared to face the facts contradicted that pretense in his day. Cursed be upon the founders of religions, or the founders of so-called religions. Who, but the spirit of Eusebius, would have recalled those annihilating declarations against Christianity made in his history of the Church? He well conjectured that those admissions on his part ought to be utterly fatal to the pretense of the originality of the so-called Christian religion, as will be seen in the communication from the spirit of Sir Thomas Bodley. The fact of the existence of the Ante-Nicene library to which the Eusebius refers is fully explained. The testimony of the spirit of Eusebius to the fact that Christianity had its origin with and was founded by Apollonius of Tyana was expounded by Ammonius Saccas. It is not more important than it is true that Ammonius Saccas should have given them an Alexandrine coloring was to be expected, and this, the spirit of Eusebius testifies, was the case. When he says the Christian Gospels and epistles were all the works of priests, we understand him to mean that the titles they bear and their present modified forms are the work of Christian priests. Equally important and truthful is the declaration of the Spirit that the Gospels and epistles of Apollonius of Tyana were in the Syriac, Hebraic, or Samaritan tongue, and were subsequently translated into Greek by translators who construed them to suit themselves. The Spirit testified truly when he said that Christianity and paganism were identical, that the Christian Easter festival was but the feast of the Greeks and the Phoenicians in honor of Adonis, which literally meant Ad, the Lord, On, being, Es, the fire, or the one supreme fire, the being the sun. Well, there's that's not the right etymology, but let's leave that. The Confession of Eusebius, that it required very little learning to see that the original Jesus Christ was a mythical Hindu god called Christos, is a stinging reproach of the Christian clergy who have shut their eyes to that almost self-evident fact. And here Eusebius states a most important and significant historical fact, and that is, in his day, there were documents extant that showed that Christos, or Krishna, was worshipped in the temple of Mathura on the Jumna in the days of Sanchuniathon of 1200 BCE. We found the following concerning Mathura and Johnson's Universal Cyclopedia. Now, remember that 4200 BCE is the oldest date I can find of the celebration of Easter. By 3100 BCE, we have the celebration of Christmas. on the dates that the Christians celebrate these things, mind you. Mathura, or Mutra, a town of British India, in the northwestern provinces on the Jumna, is a decaying and disagreeable place. But as to the birthplace of Krishna, it is highly venerated by the Brahmins and visited by a great number of pilgrims. The shores of the river are provided with gorgeous flights of steps, and the city contains an immense temple, from which, however, foreign conquerors have carried away the idols of gold and silver with the eyes of diamonds. Sacred apes are kept here. They are fed at the public expense and allowed to do what mischief they like. Swarms of holy parrots and peacocks are also maintained. As Mathura was the reputed birthplace of the Hindu Christos, well, there's a whole series of analogous mythological characters, which did tend to have some basis in some historical character. It is more than likely his worship had its rise there, and the statement of the spirit that Christos was worshipped there as early as the time of Sun Kanyathan, the oldest of all known authors, 1200 BCE, is confirmed by known facts. For anyone to pretend that the medium, an almost illiterate man, ever concocted that remarkable communication is preposterous. And yet there are people who are so prejudiced or lost to all reason as to make that pretense. Yeah, an almost illiterate. He can read the books, but we don't acknowledge him as a scholar. Yeah, maybe he saves his philosophical opinions for when he's doing his thing. Now, if something stood out, maybe I'd say, okay, maybe there's a spirit involved, or this guy's genius. There's something, of value to this. But I'm just not seeing it that far. You can correct me. You can tell me reasons why you think that, this should be believed, like to the point where Christians don't believe their Bible, or you could say something else. Now, okay, Ishtar, the Göbekli Tepe is really the origin of a lot of the mythology that the Christians refer to. It's like I had a neighbor came over because he bought a National Geographic one day, and he was saying something about, see, this is where religion, no, this isn't the religion I'm founding on. This is not what I mean when I say the word religion. This is what I mean when I say the priestcraft, the sophistries, the fanaticism that isn't really part of religion. This is where my criticism lays. Because they said, okay, well, they've set up this group of people to do the rituals for them. Now, if they just met there and that sort of thing, I see it's beeping, so I gotta go.